Hello and welcome back to another session. This will be a practice session on the previous one that we learned called a handling component tree. So in this one, we'll put our knowledge to test and we'll be continuing with the several iterations that we have seen of the to-do list app of ours. So let's head over right into the code sandbox to see what this is. Alright, so this is the code or the code sandbox which I've taken from the previous iteration where we just left while we were studying managing component tree. So in this I have just simply forked out from the last version of that. Apart from this, as you can see, we have some errors being thrown over us. The reason for that is I have extracted the input area component from here. Okay, so if you remember, in one of the practice sessions, we talked about how can we extract the list item component from here, in which every single item was listed when we added them as separate tasks in our to-do list application. Similarly, in this case, I have just simply extracted whatever was written inside here and pasted it as another component in which I have had this simply created this function and I have returned whatever. So in order to demonstrate one thing, let me just copy this and paste it over here and simply comment this input area out. Okay, so if I do this, this is another div. Okay, so let me make a correction here. Set tasks, we have an handle change or delete task. So this was input text and this is handle change, and the add item one we have created with the name of handle change. Okay, handle change like this. All right, so if I just pasted it like this way, if you see, one closing div is also here. Okay, let's not worry about that. So if we are clicking on change, the handle click should be here. Okay, sorry for the initial inconvenience. Let me update it the same here as well. CLICK. All right, so now you can see if I simply pasted this code here, this app is working just fine. All right, and I click here, that these are getting deleted. So similar to this one, I simply took this entire code out, put it inside an external component called input area in here, and I have created a custom React component after importing it like this. And now your task is very simple for this practice session, that is to make this code work as it did initially. Okay, because now we have an app component, a list item or several list item components depending upon the number of tasks that you have, and a separate input area component. So make use of the knowledge gained in the previous session and try to complete this challenge. So pause this now and give it a go. So I have created yet another copy of this one. So let's take a look inside input area component. All right, this is an external component, and what are the errors that we are seeing in this up till now? So the number one is saying that handle change function is not defined. Okay, so if we look inside app.jsx, you will be able to see that this handle change function, since we have a constant value, equals to this event.target. And as we know that since it is being called from input area or this input tag, So this event.target is basically referring to this input. So it will be better to simply cut this entire function and paste it here itself, because most of the stuff that it is dealing with is related to this input tag of ours, and it is not required anywhere else in the app component or even in the list item component for that matter. The next error that we can see inside handle change is this set input text. So it is saying that set input text is not defined. So if we head over to app, you can see that this set input text is actually the setter of input text constant, which stores whatever we type inside the input area, all right, in lifetime, because it is a stateful variable. So I've simply cut this and pasted this here. So now you can see that one error is coming over this use state, saying use state is not defined. So always remember that whenever you type this use state separately inside Code Sandbox, only then it will be able to automatically add it alongside these importing of React modules. But if you are simply copy pasting it from one place to another, that means you will have to explicitly import it above. Okay, so now we can see that the error accompanying use state is now gone. So the next thing is coming from this onClick function on our button tag. And if you see this, it is saying that handle click is not defined. So actually it is looking for this particular function, handle click. Now it will not make any sense to simply take this handle click function and put it inside our input area component. And the reason for that is that this handle click is actually used here inside app component, not only inside this input area. Okay, when that handle change function was concerned, if we take this input text, which is also just concerned with the input area, and this set input text corresponding to this IP text and this handle change function, so all of these are just functions or variables completely related to input tag of ours. So that's the reason we simply cut them and pasted them inside this external component. But the same cannot be done with handle click. And the reason, as I told you, that several other areas are also dependent on this inside our app component. So what should we do now? So that means somehow we need to call this handle click from inside the input area. Okay, we need to call this from here and pass this IP text as a parameter to this function. So what is the answer to this problem of ours? The answer is obviously props. So as we have seen in the last session, you can pass these functions as props along with the passage of simple variables. So if we create a prop that we call, for example, add item, and we make this equals to handle click function like this. Okay, now once we do it and we head over to this input area, now inside here what we can do is, first we can mention props here like this, and then instead of handle click we can mention props dot add item, IP area inside app. So we have created an add item equals to handle click. Okay, where handle click is this function, and inside this, just to make sure that I've spelled it accurately, okay, so let's make its I capital so that it's able to recognize it Let's try it out. Okay. Now we have added this. So the another thing that we require is, we know that we need to pass the parameters inside this as well. And what parameter do we need to pass inside this? It is this input text, which is the live text that is actually being currently typed inside the input field. Okay. And there's a problem associated with us simply passing this as a parameter inside this function. And we saw that the problem is actually, as soon as this component is rendered, it will call this function directly, but the use case is we want this function to be called only if this button is clicked. And as an answer to this, we already saw that we can create a function inside this onClick, so that this arrow function, it will only be called once this button is clicked, and then and only then this dot add item function will be called along with input text as a parameter. And we know that this add item, we have binded it to this handle click function. So in short, props.addItem with input text as parameter will call this handle click function with input text as parameter. All right. So that means that we will simply add the input text, whatever we have with us, in here as soon as the button gets clicked, and it will be added to our array and not while rendering it. So the final thing associated inside this or inside this app, if you see that is causing problems, it is this set input text. And as discussed previously, the task of this set input text is, for example, if I try to add one task and I click this button, okay, initially it is simply not working. So let me show you once again what I meant by that. If I added a task A like this and I hit add, I want this input area to again switch back to blank or to reset itself. And for that purpose, we wanted this input text to get blank again. So what should we do with this set input text? The simple answer is that since input text and set input text, both of these are located now inside this input area component, it will be better to simply take this from here like this and paste it below the region where we are actually calling this add item function or this handle click function. Because once we call this handle click function, the input text, whatever is there, it gets added to, okay, hold on, we have this. Okay, what's the problem? Unexpected token. Okay, I think there's one issue with the braces. Yeah, now it should work. Let's save it here. Let's save it here. And now we know that it will get setted or resetted back to empty string, the input text variable, as soon as one item is added inside this list. So let's say in here, if I write task B and I click add, you can see it immediately wipes off the slate back to its initial state. Like this, it's gone. And if we click them, they get deleted as well. So that's how we were supposed to complete this challenge. I hope you were able to understand what we saw. It was simply a little challenge that helped you to get the concept of managing a component tree. And let me show you one more thing in here. I think we forgot to analyze the situation or the current state that we have created in here. So if I open it inside an external tab and I head over to these React developer tools, you can see that if now I add a task like this, so you can see the way that we had a parent component called app. Inside these, we further have these two children components, all right, the input area, and this input area have its own hooks, its own props. Similarly, this list item has its own props. You can see these several properties that will get updated as soon as we create other tasks. Like this, inside the input area, now we have two separate components. So this way we can see a very minimalistic component tree. So even though this to-do list app is working exactly the same as it was working while we had all of these this code, all the list item ones and the input area ones under this app component only, but at that case the app component itself had a lot of code and the application did not stood very scalable at that point in time. So the intuition and the reason behind splitting your one component into several components and the creation of this component tree in which you have one parent that is split into 1, 2 or n number of children, and they keep on splitting based on the task that they are performing. This is how a very real world manageable and scalable application is built. So the catch here is, while you are building any such application, or even if you're working with a project of yours, always try to split these from the very start, because once your code starts getting accumulated inside one file, then it will be very difficult to split out these branches out of this. So we have to always take care of this scalability issue from the very start. So with this, the management of a component tree, this topic I hope stands complete. And in the next one, we'll see the third and the final iteration of the Todoist application of ours, in which that will the remaining application and the remaining functionalities, we will complete it so that you can further go ahead and share it with your friends and take their feedback on how are they actually able to use it in order to store their to-do list or whatever daily tasks as well. So that will be all from my side for this session, and I'll see you in the next one.